Hello, you're watching Super Papa John, Episode 2, Winging It, Resident Evil 6.
You buckled in?
Yeah.
Then hold on!
This video was supposed to be up a little earlier, but I ended up getting my coronavirus vaccine the other day, and that actually put me out for a little while. So we've now taken care of one C virus, but now we're gonna have to take care of another C virus, if you know what I mean.
C virus. That's what the gorillas were calling it.
C virus. That must be what's creating those Chihuahua.
Resident Evil 6 is both the best and worst game ever made. That is my 10th grade English thesis statement right there. So before we talk about Resident Evil 6, let's talk about Resident Evil. First, who is this resident that is evil? I've never really understood the name Resident Evil, who chose that, because there is no resident that's evil. I don't know what that name means. It's called Biohazard in Japan, which made Resident Evil 7 really confusing because they called it Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. In all regions it was called that, so if you were Japanese, it was like Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I don't know, it kind of hurts to think about if you think about it too much. The creator of Resident Evil actually made another game called The Evil Within, which also, if you think about it hard enough, also just means Resident Evil, but I don't get it. So Resident Evil 1 came out in like 1994. It was like a PlayStation 1 launch title game. Really kind of cool game about, survival horror. Nothing like that had really been done, at least well. There's Alone in the Dark, but those games are bad. So Resident Evil 1's kind of cool, got bad voice acting, also has the worst song ever made in video games, so, I mean, that's kind of cool. Resident Evil 2 and 3 kind of added more action to it, made a much better game on the PlayStation 1. Resident Evil 2's pretty solid game, unless you play it on the Tiger Game Con. Then it's not a good time. So, then you get to Resident Evil 4, okay? I love Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 is fantastic. He plays Leon. Really, without Resident Evil 4, I mean, you wouldn't have games like Uncharted or The Last of Us, because really, Resident Evil 4 kind of created what you would call the third-person action game that exists today. Resident Evil 4 is really big, made a giant leap for video games. Really, really cool game. It gets a little wacky though. Like, there's a little bit of wackiness at the end of Resident Evil 4, which kind of a lot of people didn't like. Big Resident Evil fans didn't like that game isn't necessarily horror anymore, right? The other Resident Evil games were horror. This one, not so much. There's like a guy named Salazar. He's wacky. Leon says crap like, "I was a cop for a day."
Used to be a cop myself. Only for a day, though.
I thought I was bad.
But then you get Resident Evil 5. Okay, Resident Evil 5 was a big change, because Resident Evil 5 was, what if we made Resident Evil 4, but we made it co-op? Okay, fun thing about Resident Evil 5, though, is that Resident Evil 5 came out in, I want to say March or April 2009, and a little-known game called 50 Cent Blood in the Sand came out February 2009, so a month or two before Resident Evil 5. And 50 Cent Blood in the Sand is basically Resident Evil 5, but you play as 50 Cent, and it's gangster. So I like to believe that Resident Evil 5 is somehow a ripoff of 50 Cent Blood in the Sand. But Resident Evil 5 gets really wacky. It basically took some of the craziest parts of Resident Evil 4 and dialed it up a little bit. Resident Evil 5, you play as Chris, and he is just jacked. You got Sheva, and they kill zombies in Africa. Or BOWs, they call them. I don't know what that means. Do they really tell you any of these acronyms mean? Like, there's a giant BOW on a boat that's like the size of a boat, and you gotta blow it up. And like the game ends with you like fighting Albert Wesker inside of a volcano, and like Chris is like punching a boulder with his bare hands. Like it gets pretty wild, okay? So I kind of talked about Resident Evil, you know, as a series, because you got to build up to what Resident Evil 6 really is, okay? Resident Evil 6 takes all that wacky stuff from Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 and decides to dial it up to 11. Okay, this game is absolutely bonkers. So first, before we even talk about the game, let's talk about the logo of the game, okay? You look at it and you think, oh, okay, it's just a big 6, right? But the longer you look at it, the more you realize that is not a 6. That is a giraffe getting a blowjob. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't want to be crude or anything, but that's what it is. Like, you're gonna tell me I'm wrong? Cause that's what it is. So Resident Evil 6, all right, you turn on the game and you're forced into a tutorial section, okay? And this is the game setting the tone. So you start out as Leon. Leon's the main character of Resident Evil 2, 4, and he's in this one, okay? So Leon is chilling. He just gets up out of being passed out on the ground. They're in China, I think. And there's a lot of Zambambos. There's a lot of zombies, okay? And he's got to... Cars just start blowing up. I don't know why cars start blowing up. They just do. I couldn't play this section for the game without deleting my save file, and I really didn't want to do that, so I didn't. So here's just canned footage I found on YouTube. But cars are just blowing up, all right? Leon is just running on top of cars while things blow up. They jump in a helicopter, and you're like, okay, helicopters in Resident Evil always blow up. I don't think there's a single helicopter that's ever made it in a Resident Evil game. They all blow up. And so somehow the pilot of the helicopter pilot, he's now a zombie. And this crap happens. Like, the game just starts out like that. Like, the game's already just gonna tell you, this game is insane. But, like, the weird thing about it is it is played so straight. Like Leon has some of the craziest, wackiest one-liners for a game that is just absolutely bonkers.
What are you going to do?
We're going to China.
Like, I don't know if this game's supposed to take itself seriously or not. And that's how I kind of came to the conclusion that Resident Evil 6 is the best and worst game I've ever played. It's kind of like The Room, you know, Tommy Wiseau's The Room. How people call that the worst movie ever made, yet people love watching it. Now, why do people love watching something that is supposed to be the worst, you know? Because it's so bad, it's funny. And Resident Evil 6 is kind of the video game equivalent of that. It's such a good time. Like, the gameplay isn't anything special. Like, honestly, it's just a third-person shooter. Each campaign, you got 3 campaigns in the game. Well, 4 technically, but that Ada's campaign's terrible. But you got Leon, and that kind of tries to be like classic Resident Evil for like the first 10 minutes, and then it just isn't anymore. And then you got Chris's campaign, which is just Call of Duty. And then you have Jake's campaign, which is also kind of just like Call of Duty. And it's just, it's bad. But it's such a good time because you have no idea how bad it's gonna be, you know? The beginning of Leon's campaign, you're just trying to get out of the city, and then you hang out with these people who apparently have a school bus coming that's gonna get them to the safe place, which I guess is the cathedral, which has a giant cemetery also full of zombies. And so, like, there's a giant fat zombie, you run over the giant fat zombie with the school bus, and then later on, a single zombie just knocks the entire school bus off a cliff, and everyone dies but your main characters, which is kind of a common theme in this game. everyone just dies. Like your main characters kind of suck. Like especially Chris. Chris just gets everyone killed. The whole story is that Chris just is a terrible captain and he gets everyone killed. The whole game's wacky. That's the thing I love about Resident Evil 6. This entire game is just absolutely insane. It almost feels like a Resident Evil fan fiction because you get basically all the main characters from all the Resident Evil games, minus Jill for some reason, who might be the most popular, especially because she's like the only character in any of the movies. Jill is. But like you get Chris from Resident Evil 1 and 5. He might be in some other ones, but 1 and 5 really. You get Leon, you know, who's from 2 and 4. And you have Claire, who's from 2. She's like a girl in 2. I don't know why she's in the game. You got Jake, who's Wesker's son. For some reason, Wesker has a kid now. And then you have Ada Wong, who's just like always, it's like, they really want to make Ada like a character. And they like try to make her like ominous, but sexy. I don't know. I was really confused what they were doing with Ada.
Chris? Leon? What are you doing here?
Put your gun down, Chris. She's a key witness. We need her.
A witness? She's the one who did all this!
No, it wasn't her. It was Simmons, the national security advisor.
I lost all my men because of her!
And I lost over 70,000 people, including the president, because of Simmons.
She's working for Neo Umbrella. You know what that means?
Yeah, I do.
And you're still going to protect this woman?
I am.
And she has like a campaign that's just unplayable. Honestly, just don't play it as campaign. It's bad. Speaking of don't play this game by yourself. There's a episode of Seinfeld where Jerry and it's the famous episode where they go to the Chinese restaurant. And like the side plot in it is like they're gonna actually go see that space movie that what's that movie called? Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is like a notoriously bad movie. And they were gonna go see it.
You two just go to the movies by yourself. I'm not in the mood.
Well, me either. I'm going to Skyburger.
So you're not going?
You don't need us.
Well, I can't go to a bad movie by myself. What am I gonna make sarcastic remarks to strangers?
And that's exactly Resident Evil 6. You can't play a bad game by yourself. This game is like you have to play it with your friends, and is like one of the best co-op games ever made just because it is absolutely insane. I recently watched a playthrough of this game, and then I played through it, and there are just things in that game. I was like, I've beaten this game, and I don't remember any of this. Like, there's so much stuff in Resident Evil 6. Like, the story, who knows what's going on? I still don't know what the story to this game is. It's just giant monsters, shooting crap, bad one-liners. It really has it all. Resident Evil 6 is so good. I mean, really the bottom line of Resident Evil 6 is it's just a game that you should definitely play. I love Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 8 comes out soon. That game's probably going to be actually good, while Resident Evil 6 will always be forever in my heart is the best, worst game I've ever played.
Elena. You don't suppose I think you can fly a plane, do you?